In the name of Torkono, just say Torkono and a chassis, and Omakuhu Otumfuo say on the on paddles, mamma, and on paddle, nank on function. A year was practical. If you know mighty chief and as a powerful chief can what help you Torkono because Mahama no use law. Even Otumfuo crying himself, Mahama is using the law. Intino say Omakuhu Otumfuo petitions only krata no mama. Now on pardon Torkono, to be reinstated. No, guys, no, it won't happen. You go to how I'll put you this scenario, no, and as a occurs and same way, no. They share Juma dinner like I daily update TV. So there's a Torkono on Pesoba dear to Mako. And like I said, Shalata say Akroma, ye unifro or nay 2 deputies. Intino say and Marania dear Juma, and then a moko petition or 2 for say. Mahaman Kasa on behalf of you. David say Empha. And no mighty chief, powerful chief can what? Talk to Mahama on your behalf, say or reinstate you, Empha. Stay tuned.
Which is a violation of the 1992 Constitution. Nothing. It has not been able to point to one thing which is a violation of the 1992 Constitution. Indeed, all that they have suggested and their supporters have suggested is that President John Dramani Mahama should violate the 1992 Constitution. They are encouraging him to violate the 1992 Constitution. Last week, something significant happened. One of the politicians in this country, everybody wakes up one night and becomes a politician. And we, the journalists, we give them front page coverage and so on. You understand? And give them huge titles and so on. Especially if they can dress like my brother here. You know. And my brother, today you have dressed well. You have dressed. But this politician actually went all the way to Kumasi. Went into Manshia and sent a petition to the Asantehene, urging the Asantehene to intervene in this matter. And I said, my goodness, he's gone gaga. Read Article 146. Why is this? How does the Asantehene come into this matter? But that is the extent of their desperation. She went and told Asantehene to stop President Mahama. Stop President Mahama. He's following the Constitution. Stop him. He's following the Constitution. Stop him. Look, everybody in Ghana, including the president, hold their positions, traditional or otherwise, on the basis of the Constitution. Chieftaincy is what it is because it is recognized by the Constitution of the Republic of Ghana and so on. So, no chief, big or small, giant or dwarf, can violate the Constitution of Ghana or can urge anybody or influence anybody to violate the Constitution of Ghana. I'm waiting to hear or to see any provision under Article 146 which has been violated by the President. Then we can begin to talk. But this appeal, false and reckless appeal to history, and so on, it won't wash. Do we want to abide by the 1992 Constitution or not? That's a very simple question. Okay? Now, here you have the suspended Chief Justice actually publicly claiming that the judiciary over which she presided, and listen very carefully, the judiciary over which she presided can be politically influenced. That's a serious statement. She's Chief Justice, oh. She's only suspended, but she's Chief Justice. What has she seen in her life on the bench which suggests that the judiciary can be politically influenced? And if indeed the judiciary can be politically influenced, is that not the strongest reason for resetting the judiciary? So she makes the argument herself. She's making a very strong argument for resetting the judiciary. You understand? And as for the Ghana Bar Association, I don't know what to say. I have done a quality test of that resolution or statement which came out of their media review. And if you do a quality test, the result is very poor. We are told that there are about 8,000. Initially I said 5,000, but I've been corrected. That there are about 8,000 lawyers in Ghana, members of the Ghana Bar Association, 8,000. Less than 50 of them meet to pass a resolution. That's the quality. And that whole meeting was attended by less than 200 of the 8,000 members of the Ghana Bar Association. By the time they got to passing this resolution, more than half the attendees had left the meeting. That's the quality of the decision which was taken. You understand? So, whatever it is, what I wish is that we follow the Constitution. The letter and express provisions of the Constitution. Let's follow them. Let's make sure that the Chief Justice is treated fairly like any other citizen. She's entitled to counsel. She has counsel. And so on. She must be treated very, very fairly. You know, her rights should not be violated at all. At the end of the day, the Article 146 committee will come up with its verdict, and its verdict indeed cannot be changed by the president. The president is enjoined by the Constitution to implement the verdict of that, So this red herrings, about whether or not the Chief Justice's husband is allowed to hold her hand while she appears before the committee and so on. Those are red herrings. Let's discuss them. They are inconsequential. When Charlotte Osei was appearing before the Article 146 committee, did she go with her husband? What is this? Let us continue following the Constitution. Even if we think that the Constitution is defective, there are ways of amending the Constitution. There are ways of amending. I think that there are many parts of the Constitution which are incongruous and so on. I mean, you cannot have a Constitution which describes Ghana as a secular state, and then in the very preamble, make references to God as the something. I mean, it's incongruous. You understand? But that is the Constitution we have. Fortunately, there's a Constitutional Review Committee, and I'm not saying that Constitutional Review Committee is going to do magic. In fact, it can end up with recommendations which will make the Constitution a worse document than it is now. I don't know what it's going to come up with. But then, there are opportunities for making the Constitution better, and so on. Let us follow the Constitution, and at the end of the day, the Article 146 committee chaired by Justice Gabriel Puaman will make his decision known, and all of us will be enjoined that decision. Finish. The point I'd like to prove now is that all the existing political parties in Ghana, one way or the other, have roots in the AFRC PNDC. Some roots may be deeper than others. Some of the political parties may have more roots than others. But essentially, all the existing political parties have roots in the AFRC PNDC era. You see, in 1979, mid-1979, all the way up to the 1980s, one of the strongest advocates of AFRC rule was Professor Albert Ebibuahin, who claimed that the principle of probity and accountability, which had been introduced by the AFRC, was an essential pursuit, essential principle in the building of a democratic Ghana. Now, many of you will remember Professor Ebibuahin's boom speech in the early 1990s, which propelled him to stardom and which led to him becoming the presidential candidate of the New Patriotic Party at the British Council Hall. Indeed, I was at that lecture. Professor Ebibuahin was at pains to try and separate egregious, what he called egregious human rights abuses of the PNDC era from its pursuit of the principle of probity and accountability. So for him, as far as he was concerned, the PNDC was pursuing the principles of probity and accountability, which was admirable. But then the egregious human rights violations had soiled the PNDC's hands and so on. I was at the lecture, and I was quite surprised when this lecture, turned out to be what it was. Eventually, we all got to understand that it was General Anokwenu's response which gave that lecture the vein that it got. They said, we actually praised the PNDC for many things, except for its human rights record, you understand? So, it doesn't end there. As a matter of fact, in 1982, when the PNDC came into being following the coup and so on, the appointments it made were interesting, exceedingly interesting. Another presidential candidate of the New Patriotic Party, John Ajekum-Kufuor, became the first PNDC Secretary for Local Government. The very first PNDC Secretary for Local Government was President J.A. Kufuor. Dr. Obed Asamoah, who played a key role in the PNDC from its inception till its end, came from that stock. Indeed, he had become General Secretary of the measure of all opposition parties, which then became known as the, I think, All People's Party or something, So Dr. Obed Asamoah also came from that stock. Then it is interesting to note that a number of members of the PNDC itself came from the Dankwa Buzia stock. And I make bold to mention Elijah Muhammad Idrisu as ideologically and politically belonging to that stock. Eventually, when the PNDC got transformed into the NDC and so on, one of its very first chairpersons was Alhaji Isifu, who also came from that stock. General Nunu Mensah, a member of the PNDC, became the campaign manager of Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo. General Nunu Mensah, member of the PNDC, became the campaign manager. He organized the campaign of Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo. Then another star in the PNDC era, Major Korit Kwashiga, became the darling boy of the New Patriotic Party. He was the poster boy of the New Patriotic Party. And Major Korit Kwashiga was at the center of all the operations of the PNDC. Indeed, he was the chief operations officer of the PNDC. And he fitted into the Dankwa Buzia tradition without any problem. He was a star, he was a poster boy of the New Patriotic Party. And we have to remember that. When Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo became president in 2017, of all the people that he could have chosen as head of his personal security, who did he choose? Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo actually chose Captain Koda, who was a key figure in the Armed Forces Revolutionary Council. Very instructive. But it didn't end there. Before the elections of 2016, Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo paid a courtesy call to former President Jerry John Rawlings. And I'm sure you all remember what he said. In that meeting, Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo made it clear that former President Rawlings has always been his mentor. Don't forget. Nana Akufo-Addo, flag bearer of the New Patriotic Party, said former President Rawlings had always been his mentor and that he had been inspired into politics. Wow. By people like Jerry John Rawlings. Should I say more? What about Rawlings, apart from his participation in June 4 and December 31st, could have inspired any politician, could have made him a mentor to Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo? Interesting. But you see, it's not over. My own good friend and comrade, John Indebugri. Wow. In the PNDC era, John Indebugri was something. He was a giant, heavyweight. Became regional minister for the upper region. The judges took place in Edulo. That's false. I've already commented extensively about why even that claim she made shows the extent to which is unable to rise above prejudice rooted in family history, and therefore disqualifies her from the high position of Chief Justice. But today, that is not the purpose of the discussion. You understand? That's not the purpose of the discussion. As we speak, the Ghana Bar Association, or the leadership of the Ghana Bar Association, has not been able, as we speak, to point to one thing which has been done in this process